Hi everyone, thank you for joining our April Florida Broker Roundtable meeting with Robert Milligan. Before we begin, I would just like to say how happy we are to now offer a ton of great free marketing tools to all of our agents, and these are now available in the AJI University. Our goal is to always give back to our agents by offering the newest tools and technology to you. None of this would be possible without you and your amazing amount of agent referrals to AJI. As Allison James continues to grow with agents referring other agents to our brokerage, we will be able to provide more of these tools to you. And remember, you can earn a monthly or yearly residual payment simply by having an agent join us. All you need to do is contact Jeff Jabora or Alicia Aratari in our National Growth and Development Department and provide them with the contact information of the agent who you would like to refer over. And with that being said, I'm going to go ahead now and pass it over to Robert. Good morning, Robert.
Good morning. Thank you for having me, and thank you for joining us this morning on our broker roundtable. This morning I'm planning to just talk about best practices, just a brush up, a refresher for some of our agents that have been with us a little while, and then I am also, and you know, it's great for agents that are new to the company as well. So what I'd like to do is just kind of walk through some of the basic steps whenever you're working with a buyer, also talk a little bit about working with sellers, and just go through contracts, listing agreements. And it's important because now there is actually a new contract that most everybody should hopefully be aware of with the new CFPB requirements. So, you know, there's some new time periods that are very, very important that we don't, you know, don't let them slip through the cracks, and we want to make sure that our buyers are protected because, you know, clearly it is our job to make sure that we are protecting our customers, and we're giving a high level of leadership there. So first thing to talk about is, you know, you're running with a buyer, you find a house that they like, and it's time to make an offer, and you have some options there. We have the new CFPB contracts that came out on September 2015 was the first rendition, and I think that there were actually even a further iteration that came out in February. But you have a choice. You can do an as-is contract or a standard contract. And I think it's important to know the pros and cons. The as-is contract actually gives your buyer a little bit more flexibility to get out of the contract if they so choose. And while an as-is contract does not necessarily obligate the seller to make any repairs or anything, you can still renegotiate. For instance, a good example is one we're working on right now, where a roof needs to be replaced on a house where the buyer is getting financing. And while it is an as-is contract, the house is uninsurable until the roof gets replaced. So obviously you can still go back and negotiate that, because if you can't get insurance, you can't get a mortgage, and you can't get the house. So that's one of the pros for as-is, is it gives your buyer more flexibility. A pro for a traditional contract is it defines the position a little bit better, where if there are repairs, you know, and there's repair limits that you'll fill in, the default is 1.5% for termites, 1.5% for general repairs, and 1.5% for clearing up any permit issues, things like that. So, you know, the pro for that is that it is predefined for your customer that the seller is obligated to pay up to those limits, which, you know, depending on the situation might be attractive for you. So, you know, you're filling out the contract. One thing that's important for all of our agents to know about is the way that we handle our escrow situation, where our company does not maintain an escrow account. Therefore, we're not audited by DBPR for our escrow account, which is a big win for management especially. But what I recommend, and what the standard practice has become, is that most people choose, whenever you're down on number 2 of the contract, you choose that the deposits to be made within, and 3 days is the default if it's left blank. I don't like leaving things blank in the contracts. I do highly recommend you actually fill in the blanks. But you know, by the time you've got an executed contract, of course, usually everybody is well aware of who is paying for, you know, choosing and paying for title, and everybody is aware of who that is going to be. So that would be the best practice. Just have your escrow checks made directly to whoever's going to end up closing the contract. So, you know, closing dates, time period, stuff like that. go and review what the time period paragraph is. You can write a hard date and closing date, or a lot of people write in 45 days or 60 days. Now with financed deals, there are some extra steps for the lender on the CFPB regulations. So I would recommend on a finance deal to try to get at least 60 days. And of course, if everybody's ready to close sooner and everybody's agreeable to that, you can always do that. But I would recommend at least a 60-day closing period for your for your finance transactions with the new CFPB requirements. So I'm just skimming over the contract just to see. I don't think there's anything else that's really massively impactful on the contract, but we'll just keep going with the process then. So you've got your fully executed contract, and now of course it is a Florida state law. It's not a company policy, it's a state law, so nobody has a sense of humor with late paperwork, because you're actually breaking the law and operating without broker supervision if you do not turn in all of your executed documents and upload them to SkySlope within a 2 business day time period. So it's not a laughing matter. It's time to get it into SkySlope. And so I will also walk you through the best practices for that. So you're going to start your transaction, and there's going to be a bunch of tabs as to who the parties are, how the transaction is structured. So who the buyer is, who the seller is, who the agent on the other side is, who the title company is going to be. Of course, this is very, very important, because whenever we are reviewing your file and you fill everything out properly to begin with, in your contract tab, you're going to have the seller, purchaser, you're going to have who the actual title company is going to be. And if you fill this out properly, there's going to be an email address, who the title company is, and whenever we review and approve your document, it's going to automatically send our company-generated commission disbursement authorization to whoever's closing the transaction. And 99% of title companies and attorneys will disperse directly to you at the closing table, which I think is very important. It's very convenient for you, and it's very convenient for us. We don't like to have to process checks if we can help it. The only exception will be on some bank-owned properties where it is like a big title mill, bank-owned title company that's processing the transaction. Some of them may, they may require the check to be cut to Allison James, of which then it gets mailed to the Loker Avenue address in Carlsbad, California, and then we process it and can wire it back to you usually within about a 5-day, 7-day period, somewhere in that range. So 48 hours after you've got your executed contract, you're going to load everything in so that we're compliant with the state. And then this is very important that a lot of new agents fail to complete entirely. So on the commission tab, you'll put in the sales price, your commission, whatever that turns out to be, and it will automatically calculate what the office gross commission is on that sale in the top segment of the commission tab. And then in the lower segment is where you itemize what all the disbursements actually are going to be. So there's, in the middle section, there's a blue bar that says disbursement authorization. You select yourself as the agent, which should have your address. If the checks get mailed, if it's a mail away closing or whatnot, will automatically populate for you. If there's a second agent that you work with on your team, that's also the place to put them in. If you are on Plan C, where you're paying transaction fees and E&O, that's also where you itemize the transaction fee and the E&O that get paid to the company. And then if there are any other deductions, such as just a fee of any sort, a referral fee, anything like that, the lower third segment at the bottom, there's a blue bar there that says other deduction. That's where you fill out who gets paid what for a referral fee or any other potential itemization that there may be. So what we see a lot of times is people complete, newer agents that just, they're not fully trained yet, will complete the top segment of the commission tab, but they fail to complete the bottom 2 segments of the commission tab. So make sure, of course, to be mindful to do that, and it will cause everything to move along more quickly, because whenever you don't do that, we have to send you a friendly little reminder to fully complete that, and it could potentially delay your closing, your commission disbursement authorization. So, it's going to be pretty obvious what transaction you're doing, whether it be a REO sale, traditional sale, short sale, whatever your category is. You're going to choose, whenever you're creating the property, you're going to choose what it is, and it will automatically give you a checklist of all of the documents that are required for that particular transaction. And whether or not it's your listing, we're going to want to see the tax record and the MLS sheet, because we want to compare the tax record with whoever is the seller on the actual contract, just to make sure that the authorized seller is the one that's signing the contract. So that's another best practice for you. Another thing that is really, really smart in our SkySlope system that I would encourage you to take advantage of is when you're looking at your file with all the tabs on the checklist, in the top right corner, you will see an automatically generated email address that is in alignment. It's congruent with the file itself. So if you get in the habit of copying, CCing on any emails that you are sending in conjunction with this file and copy that address, it's automatically going to store all of your emails and documents and everything associated with that in the cloud. So that is definitely a best practice for the company and for us. That way, if by chance there is a lawsuit or an altercation of any sort, we can very quickly go into your file and see exactly what email dialogue there may or may not have been, and it's just definitely a best practice. So that gives you a synopsis on the buy side. Of course, if everything is going smoothly, then there will eventually be a closing, at which on your checklist you go down towards the bottom, and there's a closing document section where you, after your closing, you go and you load your closing disclosure or HUD, whichever the case may be. And this is also where your approved commission disbursement will appear that you can download and send to somebody if necessary. Although whenever you start the transaction, if you put the title company's email address in properly, it's going to automatically get emailed to them as well. So, you know, assuming everything went smoothly, you're going to have a closing, you're going to get paid directly at closing. If by chance you do not have a smooth process and the transaction happens to fall apart for one reason or another, you will need to get a cancellation signed and upload your cancellation, which should be signed by all parties and should dictate who gets paid what. You know, if it's a $5,000 escrow deposit, it should, you know, state clearly if that is to be returned to the buyer or returned to the seller, get all parties to sign it, get it to whoever the escrow agent is, upload that to SkySlope and cancel your transaction so that if it's your listing, you'll be eligible to enter a new contract whenever you begin marketing that property again. So that's a good synopsis on the buy side. I would like to run through quickly on the sell side of the transaction on your listing agreement. And here you will also have some options. We have an exclusive right of sale listing agreement, which to me is, you know, 99% of the time the proper listing agreement to use. And you can get yourself into a little bit of trouble if you deviate from that, unless you're sophisticated to really know what you're getting into. But there is also an exclusive agency listing agreement, which is what you'll see a lot of times on a for sale by owner property, where, you know, maybe you're talking to a for sale by owner and they say, you know, well, I would like you to market the property on the MLS and I would be happy to pay you a commission if you sell it. However, I would still like to retain the right to market the property on my own and not pay you a commission if I sell it. Well, as you can imagine, you know, this could be a slippery slope that, you know, if people aren't communicating properly, you can get yourself into a little bit of trouble with, but it is a to know. At least, if you are interested in that, please talk to me in further detail before you really engage significantly in that sort of business, to make sure that you're not setting up for what I would recommend 99% of the time is the exclusive right of listing agreement. And this is an important document because if it's not properly executed, this is the document that obligates your seller to pay you no matter what if the title transfers on the property. So if you fail to properly execute this document and the seller, you know, for a legal argument's sake, is not obligated to pay you, and you have advertised a 3% co-broke commission in the MLS, you know, if the seller can wiggle out of this document, they could potentially not be obligated to pay whoever sells your listing, whether it be Coldwell Banker, Remax, doesn't matter. And obviously you've got a giant problem if you have legally bound yourself to pay a 3% commission to another agent, which is not necessarily due upon the sale of the property. I mean, sometimes if you have a no contingency offer that is at or above full price and it is everything that is, you know, expected to be performed, it can be argued from a legal perspective that the commission is due from the seller regardless of the closing. And if your listing agreement isn't executed properly, you could find yourself being obligated to pay somebody's commission because you put it in the MLS. And the seller may not be if you fail to execute this properly. So, you know, the odds of that are pretty low, but, you know, this isn't child play. This is an important part of our business. And so, you know, some things to point out here, I mean, it just needs to primarily be completely executed, completely initialed by all parties, signed by everybody, of course. I'm looking through here, breezing through it. One thing that I see a lot that sometimes newer agents make a mistake of is number 6 on the compensation paragraph of the listing agreement. These boxes, A, B, and C, are intended, A is the one that's primarily pertaining to the sale, but some agents make the listing agent side of the commission on, if it's 3%, hypothetically, they'll put 3% there, when in reality, this particular line is intending for the total gross commission, which ordinarily would be 6%. So make sure you put the total gross commission in line A, because that is something that most sellers would not split hairs about, but could potentially compromise your position legally if you have a difficult seller that wants to play games with you, which, again, hopefully you're working with good people and the odds of this happening are not too terribly much, but it can happen. And of course, whenever you move down a little bit to paragraph 7, that's where it's dealing with the cooperation and compensation of other brokers. That's where you put in the 3% or 2.5% or whatever you're actually offering to cooperating brokers on the MLS. And of course, never, ever, ever put a property in the MLS until you have a listing agreement properly executed, because of the reason that I just mentioned, because you are now obligating yourself to pay a commission when the seller is not legally obligated to pay you a commission. So that's obviously a massive problem that we want to avoid. So, again, back to SkySlope, all documents need to be uploaded within 48 hours, 2 business days is, I guess, the more proper way to say that if it's a weekend. And all that we generally require on your listing is going to be your executed listing agreement, your tax record, and your MLS sheet. And it's also a best practice. I like to use sellers' net estimated proceeds sheets that can give the seller a rough idea of what their closing cost and your commission and everything is going to be expected to be, and they can also start to understand what the proceeds will actually be. Also, sellers' property disclosures on traditional sales and short sales. Ideally, we like to see sellers' property disclosures, and of course, you cannot assist the customer with filling those out at all. And another best practice is any rejected offers. If you get a listing that's hot that has multiple offers, you need to load all of your rejected offers into SkySlope so that if anybody has a legal claim to say that you did not properly present all offers, we need to be able to see the offers that were presented and see how you handled it. And multiple offers are a conversation for another day because it's kind of a bigger topic. But the quick synopsis there of what you need to do with multiple offers is basically to do it properly, you have to legally notify all parties that there are multiple offers, and then you have to basically set a deadline for everybody to get their highest and best in. Usually that's 2 or 3 days out. So, say there's 5 or 6 offers, and we see this a lot with bank-owned property too, where there's 40 or 50 offers, surprisingly, which gets, really, really difficult to handle and manage. But, make sure that you've notified everybody in writing that this is a multiple offer situation, and you have, 5 p.m. on Wednesday or whatever deadline that you send to send in your highest and best. So don't want to get into too much detail with that, but at least be aware if you don't handle multiple offers properly, again, you could find yourself in a lot of trouble. So that's pretty much from the listing side. The other main, again, it's the law, but it's an advantage for your business if by chance you do not load your listing within 2 business days and you let it go a week or a week and a half or whatever. We have no record of knowing who a property is belonging to without actually digging it out of the MLS. So, oftentimes at corporate, we may, if it's a hot listing, get buyers calling in trying to get information about your listing. And if you have not put it into SkySlope, you are most likely not going to get that lead. So not only is it the law, but it's the best practice for your business. So those are some of the high points that I just wanted to refresh on. And perhaps somebody has some questions about what we've covered here. Don't want to take a tremendous amount of time, but just a quick little refresher of how we operate. I know Victoria does a lot of training with our technology, with agent marketing, we do other webinars at corporate, more specifically about how to work in SkySlope. So with that, Victoria, I think that unless somebody has any questions, I don't have anything to add for our topic here today.
Perfect. Yeah, that was great. Thank you so much, Robert. We do also do a weekly training on Tuesdays it would be 2:30 Eastern Standard Time, and it is just the SkySlope training, AJI University. It's called the Onboard Training and Review Session on the event calendar, but it is just a refresher. So if you would like some recap and a refresher on how to input listings or transactions into SkySlope, please feel free to join in on any of those sessions. Again, that's every Tuesday at 2:30. And you could find that on the AJI University event calendar. And yeah, Robert, you touched base on everything, so I think we're good to go. If anyone has any questions, though, please feel free to type those into the questions box so we will be able to see them. Doesn't look as though we have anything. Oh, just one other thing that I would like to bring up while you were discussing SkySlope and the CDAs. If you need a revision made to any of the CDAs which have already been issued to you, please go ahead and make that revision on the original CDA which was issued. You can either do that by handwriting in the revisions with the new amounts, or you can put it through one of the digital signature programs, and then please email that back to processing@ajicorporate.com. That is the correct way to request a CDA revision. I know that some agents were wondering if they had to go in and correct the commission tab themselves. No, that is something that we do at corporate. So if you do need a revision, just please make those changes on the CDA and email that back to processing. And I think that's it for this morning, Robert. So thank you everyone so much for joining us. Thank you so much for a great webinar today, Robert.
You're very welcome.
And we'll see everyone next time. Have a great rest of the day. Thank you. Bye-bye.